Yes, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jack Farmer, and this is the Evolution of Movies show. And as always, I am joined by Andy Rossi, James Shippey. Now, before we get started, if you're watching this one as it comes out, if this is the first time you're watching the Evolution of Movies, just so you know, this is spoiler filled. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, don't watch this yet. Watch the movie, then come back and watch this one. Spoiler alerts. I mean, we'll get into the movie, and you probably already know how it turns out. But how you doing, though?
Doing great. Thank you.
Good.
Good. I like it. Concise. So if you are new to this show, we call it the Evolution of Movies show because we watch movies and then we chat about them like it's a book club, but a movie club instead. And the difference is, though, we call it evolution because every time we watch a movie 1 year after the movie that we last watched. So we started in 1990, went to 91, 92. Now we're all the way up to 2021, which as of recording is this year. So that means next time it's a new season. This is the season finale. We're calling it season 1 finale.
Boom.
We're going to start it all over again next
Get
season. This is the end. This is the future. This is it. So let me take you back to a time when movie theaters were filled with hits like Red Notice, The Tomorrow War, and of course, Venom, Let There Be Carnage. But we're not talking about any of those. We're talking about King Richard, a movie IMDb describes as a look at how tennis superstars Venus and Serena Williams became who they are after the coaching from their father, Richard Williams. This movie currently stands at 91% on Rotten Tomatoes. So the year ends with Get Out at the highest spot at 98% and Safe House all the way at the rock bottom with 53%. Andy, I assume you hadn't seen this movie before this viewing. So what were your thoughts going into it for the show?
First off, when I first heard King Richard like months ago, I thought Will Smith was playing a king. So once it got closer to actually knowing what the movie was about, I was like, oh, it's about the Williams sisters. So I really didn't know much. I actually kind of avoided reading anything about it before diving in because I think James picked this like a good 3 weeks ago or so. So I knew nothing.
Yeah, I was really eager to see it because it just felt like the source material of real life just was fascinating to me. I love these kind of stories. So I was really eager to see it. And I had already heard rumblings of this being a contender for many awards. And so I was excited to see it. I'm usually not an award movie kind of person, but I was excited to see this one. And spoiler alert, it did not disappoint for me. James, you picked the movie. Tell us about the choice and why you picked it and thoughts going in and all that good stuff.
Yeah, well, when I saw King Richard about the Williams sisters, I said, well, I have no idea how this is going to end. So let me, figure this out. But, it's funny. It depends on the time we were going to do this. I wanted to do Matrix. What is it? Renovations? Which one is it?
Renovations.
I like Renovations.
It's like Fixer Upper, but in the Matrix.
They fix up Neo's house.
Right. I'm a huge genre movie fan, so I was gonna pick that movie. I'm kind of really geeked out about it, but it hadn't came out yet when we were recording this. And I had heard that King Richard was very good. I had mixed feelings. I knew it'd probably be good, but I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll pick that because it's already out. And, I'll be honest with you. I mean, it exceeded my expectations. I can't say this enough. If they don't give Will Smith the Oscar for this movie, he's never going to get it unless it's a Lifetime Achievement Award because he went there this time.
Yeah.
It's this and Pursuit of Happiness. I think Pursuit of Happiness is my personal favorite movie. It is. But this is like right up there. And it's funny because you're seeing an actor evolve playing an older man. I forgot when Pursuit came out, maybe 15 or 14 years, like over 10 years ago. So
yeah.
It was a pleasant surprise. It's a very good family sports, you root for something kind of drama. It's a good crowd pleaser movie. That's all I can say.
Has Will Smith never won an Oscar?
No.
He has
been nominated for
nominated.
Ali and Pursuit of Happiness.
Yeah,
Really?
I think just those two movies. Yeah, Ali and Pursuit of Happiness.
Yeah, this was, and we'll get into the details play by play, but I can't believe I was watching this and I would forget that it was Will Smith, which is insane to me that someone as star powered as Will Smith, at one time, I would say the biggest star in the world. And I am watching this and I don't see Will Smith. I see Richard Williams, who actually in my mind, I called him King Richard throughout the whole movie. Every time he said something, like that was his name to me throughout this movie.
You know, that means he did a great job, because usually Jack is always, oh, that's you know,
Will
Sandra
Smith.
Bullock or
yeah.
Yeah,
I never so and it's not like he's like a moderate star, you know. He's, like I said, at one time the biggest star on planet Earth, I would say, back when he was in his heyday. Still,
like at least
still
like
the
a
biggest
10-year run of like if the numbers were, he was obviously the most bankable star, like maybe all through the 2000s for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think he had a run. It was a 10-year or 10-film run where every movie he did was #1 that weekend. And we're not talking small numbers, talking like close to 100 million or more.
I feel like
he was the Rock of his time in a lot of ways.
For sure.
Yeah.
I feel like his movies always came out on the 4th of July weekend too. It just seemed like, I remember my friends, I always like 4th of July. It's like, well, time to go see Men in Black. Time to see Independence Day.
Yeah. And then time to go see Hancock. Okay, maybe not all of them were winners, but
I loved Enemy of the State. I think I'm one of the only people. I think that movie's great.
Actually, it's not bad. It was the #1 film, even though you wouldn't think it was.
It's a good one.
It was a fun one. We'll probably review it next time around, but we are gonna have to get into this movie. But before we do, I want to thank everyone who's been watching, listening, sharing, subscribing, 5-star reviewing, commenting, all that good stuff. In fact, this one, because it is the season finale, why don't you hit us up and let us know in the comments below or wherever the movies you would like to see us review next time from next year or for the next season, whatever we're going to call it. What movies do you want to see us talking about? What are some of your favorites? What are some of your least favorites? Maybe punish us with a bad movie. I don't know, but let us see what you want to hear us talk about and leave it in the comments. You guys ready?
It's a blank slate, people. Yeah. We have nothing on the what is it?
I want you guys to hate watch this movie with me.
Yes.
Empire Records. Return of Rex Manning.
I would watch that.
For some reason, I imagine him with like guns, like it's a action movie though this time around, and he dance fights everybody.
Now, man.
So let's get into what this movie, the show is actually about. So, King Richard. We see Richard as he tells us about life in Louisiana versus Compton, but most importantly, how he immersed himself in tennis and how dedicated he was to creating a game plan to going to tennis clubs and keeping his kids working. And we see immediately just how important and focused he is in the pursuit of making his kids champions while training and studying the reality of growing up in Compton rears its head as Richard has to defend his daughters, but he's undeterred throughout it all. The stresses of training and working are draining the family, but he continues to have his daughters journal before going to bed, keeps giving them uplifting quotes, and he goes to his job as a security officer while still just researching and diving deep into tennis. James, this is the setup. We see that right now, Richard is someone who doesn't just dabble. I mean, he goes all in on tennis. Tell us about this world that we live in.
I thought they did a fascinating thing by just getting straight to it. I didn't know that they would come in at this point. I mean, I didn't really know what to expect, but to show him already in the tennis world or trying to find his way there, I thought was pretty good. I mean, they get straight to the point of showing that this man has an obsession with tennis, but not only just tennis, he has an obsession with seeing his daughters do well. You know what I mean? And get out of, rise up out of poverty. and in such a way that you would think it was like, you know, like you say, like someone's like so into something, it might even be a little off, you know, with it. Like it's not, when someone's that enthusiastic to do the extraordinary, normally, you know, they may come off as like a little crazy, you know, like, you know, because it's not logical, right? Most people only believe what they can see. And I believe this is once again, a perfect starring vehicle for someone like Will Smith, because outside of him being a big star, you know, after Fresh Prince and after becoming like a rapper and all that stuff, he also became kind of like a motivational speaker. Like if you go on YouTube, you can see his wisdom. And I think like it's kind of like him doing this kind of film is like also, it's supposed to be like for inspiration's sake. And you see how devoted he is with his daughters, and him going to the night job. It's you know, working security, but still being so involved with his kids, probably, you know, at other times. I just find that it's just really inspiring, and it just kind of lets you know, kind of like maybe what the working class has to deal with, in a sense. Like it's not, you know, they may not have nannies or daycares, and even though they were in poverty, it was great to see a portrayal very early on of a very close-knit family. And just because you don't have a lot of money doesn't really say anything about your character as a human being, or about what you care about. And I think those kind of things really touched me as a dad. Of course,
there it is.
You know, it might hit me a little different like a year or two ago, but you know, that kind of stuff just, we'll talk about it later, but Niagara was falling, okay, at some point. I'm just gonna let you know that. It wasn't Will Smith only. One point my wife was like, "Are you okay?"
Just been chopping up some onions again.
So I mean, you talk about how into it is and how congruent he is as a character. I mean, he even dresses the part of a tennis player. Now, the one thing that I guess as I think back on this, and Andy, I want to talk to you about, as James said, they jump right into it. There was a little bit of a disconnect from, he's like, "Hey, I'm from Louisiana," but then he doesn't talk about why he moved to Compton, what brought him there, why tennis of all things. They didn't really talk about that. Were you okay with them just sort of saying, assume that this is where we're at and we don't need to know that, or would you have liked more?
I did, yeah. I definitely wanted more. I mean, he wrote like a 78-page, plan to make his daughters. I had a lot of questions in the beginning, trying to figure out, why tennis and why just those two sisters? Because there's, 3 other sisters, I guess stepsisters, right? So I was kind of curious about why Venus and Serena were picked, but I thought maybe they were just naturally had the talent already and already kind of displayed that. I kind of just assumed that. I was more so seeing, like you mentioned, Jack, Will Smith, who's one of my all-time faves, and just right away his voice, his mannerisms, his booty shorts, and I was kind of like, yeah, here's Richard, like just like a total, like that's a character, like that's not Will Smith, that's a character, and I really like that, because then you could kind of follow the movie, as opposed to, it is sometimes hard when you got these big, movie stars and you're just like, oh, look, there's Will Smith, pretending to be a bodybuilder or whatever it is. But it's like, no, there's Richard. He's living in Compton. He's really into tennis. But yeah, I was missing that about why he was so into it and what brought him out to, I was thinking about that.
So as we continue into the story, he's going place to place, going to different golf clubs, and he's turned down from more and more of these clubs and told it's very unlikely that his kids are actually going to be that good. Then he gets jumped by the gang that's after his daughter. So he takes a gun and to go find the gang, and before he does anything foolish, there's a drive-by, and it kind of takes care of the problem for him. So they decide to go to Beverly Hills, and they see McEnroe and Sampras training, and they decide to let the girls show what they can do for a little bit, and they blow away the coach, Paul. By the way, line of the movie, in my opinion, happens here, where he asks, who do you want to play like? And she says, I want them to play like me.
Love that. Yeah,
what a great line. The coach, he actually says, I will agree to teach her for free, but only Venus. Now, Andy, for this, this is where we get the first like bit of hope in the movie that things are moving forward in a good way, but you can already see where the drama might start because you have the two sisters, but only one of them is getting the opportunity.
Yeah, and I am thankful though that it was Venus. It would have been, I think, even harder if like the younger sister got to play and the older sister had to watch her little sister. So yeah, and I think that was me as a sports fan anyway. I think I did know of Venus Williams before I knew about Serena Williams. She just kind of came up, before Serena, and then Serena has since, spoiler alert, has kind of surpassed, not kind of, she's surpassed her. She's the GOAT.
Yeah.
The scene I did really want to talk about though is the scene you mentioned. I think is insane. So insane when that dude, you just want that guy to get his comeuppance when he jumps poor Richard, and they're like beating him while he's down, and then he grabs the gun, and you're like, oh my God, what is he gonna do? And then a drive-by happens. That, to me, that was just, it was so crazy to see that happen. And then, like you said, then they go to Beverly Hills and see that world.
Wait,
there's
hold
Pete
on, let's
Sampras.
not bury the lead. He cold cocked that guy, which I think anyone would.
With the racket,
tennis racket. The dude had the gun cocked in his face and said, "I'm just gonna walk away." Like, I'm gonna be honest with you. If you watch, just turn on the news, ladies and gentlemen. Turn on the 9 or 10 o'clock news. Because obviously it's a TV show, a movie, so there's going to be some embellishments. I don't know if this happened just like we need some drama.
Yeah,
I don't know if he would have survived that.
I don't think so,
but it would have been a short film at that point.
Yeah,
right. But yeah, in what world do you? Oh my God, an old man with his children. What kind of scumbag are you to like do that? And here's the thing too. I turned to my wife, and she taught my wife grew up in Brazil, and it's pretty wild there. There are people who are pretty bold there too, from what she told me growing up. But I'm like, man, it's got to be tough, man. When you have daughters, you got to worry about that kind of stuff, right? And especially where he's at, he's got 5 girls to deal with, and they're in the hood. And depending on what part of town you grow in or what part of the country, you're dealing with so many elements that most people never have to worry about.
Yeah. Well, and that's something that I'm glad they highlighted. To your point, is that I think people who don't grow up in those neighborhoods take it for granted a bit. That like, oh yeah, you can go play tennis and practice, but it's not that easy for a lot of people to just go and play tennis. And I'm glad that they showed that, because it shows how hard it is and must have been for them. Because I'm sure that I'm sure that things like that didn't happen once. I'm sure it's happened more than once, but you got to deal with that and fight through it. And it shows just how much perseverance that kind of stuff takes, I'm guessing.
I can't even imagine, though. I'm not a dad, but if I were, I can't imagine my reaction if some guy was saying that kind of stuff about my daughter. But you're in such a weird position. I probably would have gotten killed, because it's just like, this guy's talking shit about your daughter, saying bad stuff, and you're outnumbered.
Right. And you've lived to fight another day, or even if you listen to your anger at the time, then something happens to you, you get murdered. Now your daughters have no dad. It's just, what a tough situation to be in. But that's what makes the story incredible. That's why it's such a big deal. And we'll talk a bit about that and when they get to the country clubs. But let
me just say one more thing. When he gets there, because we're talking about the scene where you see Sampras and John McEnroe, right?
Yeah, we had seen that. Yeah.
Just the persistence of Richard, just like I actually thought it was very like inspiring, because as a person that's like a creative and performer myself, there's a lot of times somebody tells you no and you go, okay, I'll just go tail between my legs, where like he was just like, no, you have to see them, you must see them play, like, is this very, and then finally the guy said, fine, go ahead, and they were ready to go.
And that was so cool too, because the guy knew who Richard was. He was like, yeah, I got your brochure. You're the brochure guy. I know who you are. Like, it's not like he tried it once and was persistent. It was like, yeah, we all know who you are, Richard. You've been here. You come and bug us all the time. So that was actually, to your point, Andy, yeah, very inspiring. And one of those things that I think a lot of people, again, you take for granted. You think, oh, the Williams sisters are talented and they got noticed, but it's not that easy. They could have played in Compton their whole life and never been seen.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's yeah, that persistence. It's you know, I remember hearing a guy once say, it was a filmmaker, and he made this statement. He said, "Fortune favors the bold." You
Mhm.
know, and there's something to it, yeah, because human nature. Most people here know like that. They'll just kind of, yeah, they'll kind of walk away. But you know, sometimes you have to be relentless in your pursuit, and you
Mhm.
know, keep knocking on those doors. You know, depending on what you're trying to do.
Right. And
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's it was very inspiring to see. And it's,
Mhm.
so Venus ends up getting coached. She's trained like crazy with her coach, but Mama Williams is training Serena. The coach is breaking away from Richard's teaching, and you can already see the friction between the two. The coach says, you get paid by playing in the juniors. So they do. And Venus lives up to the hype. Serena is training hard, but Venus continues to win. And the girls brag about the win, and Richard wants none of it. So they watch Cinderella to teach the lesson of being humble. But the friction between Richard and his wife starts to grow as well. And James, this is again, we see that just because Serena didn't get picked up, the mom starts saying, "Cool, I'll train her too." But we also see that Richard isn't in it just for bragging rights. He's in it for greatness.
No, he is, and I think he's trying to teach. You know, he's trying to teach him about the humility. I thought was really good. And as you mentioned, I believe this his wife's name, Brandy, the actress. Her name is
Mm-hmm.
Ingenue Ellis. She's one of those actresses you've seen and stuff, but you may not know her name.
Mm-hmm.
I thought she was amazing in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Just got a Golden Globe nomination.
Oh, did she?
For
Golden
Mm.
this
Globe
one?
came out.
Yeah, she did. Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, good.
nice, nice. Well, yeah, she deserves it. I'm sure she may be nominated for an Oscar. And when she's doing that speech and all that stuff, you know, there's a monologue later on when she talks about being there with Richard. They get into it, and that's going to be played during award season whenever she's up for her awards, obviously. But yeah, we see that fissure because as dedicated as Richard is, he's also a very stubborn man. He's not perfect, so we see his flaws. You know, is for someone to be that determined, you know, there's also going to be things that come with a price. You know, he's also determined at home, and you know, I think they may call him King Richard in the film because he kind of behaves like a king, right? If you think about it, it's like it's my way to do this. There's not much what do you call it, negotiation here.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this isn't like Congress or you know an elected.
Yeah.
Well, there's not much negotiation there either. That's a different show. That's a
Right.
different show. But yeah, what we get to see there is how they're butting heads in parenting style, and that's going to make for great drama later on. Because in movies like this, like in a lot of times, movies can go really this easy route is just a supportive wife, and
Hmm.
you know, oh yes, just be this way, and yes, baby, yes, she's yes anding the whole movie,
Mm-hmm.
right? You know, like it's a UCB class, but she's not doing that, and you see that stuff where she's butting heads with him about his parenting style, and it's good. It's great conflict.
I also like that she's actually coaching, and it's something
Yeah.
that, to your point, we'll bring it up again later. But yeah, she's not just a yes and she's a character, and she's very just as involved in the training aspect. She's not
Yeah.
just like, oh, that's you and the girls thing. It's like this is the family's thing that we see
Which
throughout the movie.
which is great because honestly, I'm hoping that that's true. I had no idea. You just assume it's just Richard the whole time. Matter of fact, I didn't even know they had coaches separately. The way the narrative's always kind of been, you would assume like, oh, Richard's the one that taught them.
Hmm.
Period. There's not, I mean, it's not taking anything away from him, but it's great to see that the mother's there helping work on the serve and working with Serena since she can't get those lessons in person.
Hmm.
And laying the groundwork for why Serena became such a I don't know if ruthless is the right word, but she was someone that would go for the throat. She's the Michael Jordan of tennis.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Maybe
well, they call her a killer a few times, so
yeah.
ruthless
I mean,
might
she's the
be.
Michael Jordan because she took no prisoners, and maybe it's also too because she was that much more motivated because it was harder for her to get in there. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. Andy, anything you want to add before we? I think
I covered everything. You're good.
Yeah.
No, I mean, the only thing I wanted to make sure I mentioned, at some time is the two little girls that play Venus and Serena. Like, for one, great little actresses, but I don't know how much I should have studied it a bit more, but I don't know how much time they put in the tennis. I'm guessing a lot, because they look great out there. And it doesn't look like it was like stunt people that came in and played tennis. Like, I think they legit like learned how to play tennis and had the look, like Venus and Serena. How do you do that? So I thought they did an amazing job.
Casting must have been very tricky for this movie for those two. But
they were great.
Talking about training, after a training session in the rain, one of the gang members drives by and says he sees what they're doing and not to worry, that they're good now. The police go to Richard's house because the neighbor thinks something's going on with the kids, but Richard talks them out of it. Venus goes back to another junior, but Serena sneaks in as well. They both get trophies, and now the newspapers are catching on to Venus. Speaking of the news, the story of Rodney King breaks, which will lead into a lot of other stuff in a little bit. Andy, this was interesting because it feels a little bit like, and maybe this is the story of life, where the gang sort of sees, oh, you're actually doing something, that you're being successful. Now we'll leave you alone. Is it what I got from that? Did I read that correctly, or did you see something different?
No, yeah, I mean, that's what I saw as well. I think that, maybe getting some recognition of, oh, you're actually trying to build these girls into something, before maybe they just thought he was some, I got to mention his booty shorts again. Some guy with his booty shorts and long socks, just bumbling around. He kind of seemed like, I don't know, from the outside, maybe looks like kind of a doofus. But then when you actually see that these girls are like, to use what you guys have said, like killers, like they're like badass tennis players. I think maybe the neighborhood's like seeing like, wow, okay, this might be, these girls, this guy might be up to something.
I mean, to be fair, you walk around booty shorts with your socks pulled all the way up. I mean, you're
kind of up to the booty.
Yes.
Booty socks.
There was more sock on his leg than shorts. But this is where there was also, this was a very powerful moment, I thought, as well. And James will speak to you about it, is the child protection or police or whoever shows up to the Williams house because the neighbor thinks they're abusing the kids or whatever. But Will Smith comes in, or King Richard comes in and just lays down the law and is like, look, we do push our kids hard. Spell civilization. And it was funny because I was thinking, could I spell civilization? And he really lays down, yes, we are hard on the kids. And I thought, for me, again, I'm not the guy, I guess I'm not the guy that always can call out great acting. But for me, I thought that was an incredible performance by him here.
Yeah, no, it is. And once again, it's like, I mean, you can't disagree with him. I mean, we're going this extra mile to make sure our kids aren't statistics. So that's not a crime. And if it is, go ahead and arrest me now, which you won't, because, these kids are, or I think I don't know if it was here, but he had mentioned their grades or something like that. Maybe it was either here or somewhere else, but
they said they're all top of their class.
Yeah, top of the class. These kids are all well-mannered. If it's some, shenanigans going on in the house, you can get a good feel for that. But I will say this, I really don't know, based on the film, why the neighbor, I know they probably put that in there for the sake of the story. To me, that didn't seem like some reason to call CPS on him.
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
I feel like that neighbor, I really don't get what was the problem between him and the neighbor. At one point I thought, oh, is that someone that he's had a relationship with?
That's what I thought, yeah.
I thought it was maybe something of that nature. You kind of got that feel the first, 10 or 15 minutes of the movie when he first interacted with. I thought it was maybe a personal vendetta thing. Maybe she was feeling slighted by King Richard. But, besides that, for story's sake, that's kind of the first time we see Will Smith. This is a full Will Smith vehicle. So you get a chance to see him kind of flex his dramatic muscle more so in that scene. I think that was kind of one of those first moments.
Yeah, this will be great for Will Smith's demo reel. help him get some work.
Yeah, help him help some CDs, bring him in for a read, right?
Right, yeah. But I think with The Neighbor, I think that what that did help sort of teach is that I think The Neighbor, from a story perspective, was like, hey, your kids are out in the rain. What are you doing? Like, they shouldn't be out in the rain. And I think that was just trying to show that even the neighbors were sort of against him, and that he had to fight against. Just that there was a lot of toughness everywhere.
I did enjoy watching it for that sense where you got the neighbors against him, the trainers that are like, no, I'm not going to take you on. For me, knowing like, oh, well, you're going to be wrong in the end, buddy, because these girls are badasses. Like, it was just kind of funny. It's like, already know, like, hey, this is going to work out. And then like, you idiots, you don't get it.
It's tough. That is the tough part about watching movies like this, where, when Will Smith or when King Richard is saying, hey, you should train my daughters for free, as a viewer, you're like, yeah, they're going to be great. Of course you should jump on this train. But then you try to remember at the time, these guys are probably getting hit up every day from people trying to get them to train them. And if it's your job, you're like, look, you got to pay me. I'm not doing this for free.
And you never know. I always think of the NFL draft when they were trying to either pick Peyton Manning or Ryan Leaf. That was really a thing. They had to try to pick which one was better. Like, now you look back, you're like, yeah, Ryan Leaf was way better.
Right. Which, by the way, hot take, no one knows anything about the draft. It's all a guessing game.
Yeah.
People act like they know. It's a guessing game. But I digress. This is where some good stuff came in for me. Something that I really appreciate here is now they're getting a little successful. The girls are now standing with Nancy Reagan during the Just Say No campaign, and they're talking about representation, and that's when racial tensions get pushed a little bit more. And Richard doesn't want the money from the agents, and he doesn't want the daughters eating free food. His coach tries to convince him to keep the kids playing juniors, but Richard fires the coach, Paul, much to the chagrin of his wife. And James, I want to chat with you about how what I loved about this scene is I'm a big believer. I've said before, if a movie goes over 2 hours, you need to justify everything. And this movie went over 2 hours. And this scene, to me, justified all the talk in the beginning about where Richard grew up and about how he grew up around the KKK and, the white boys from the other town, and how he had to deal with these people his whole life. And he can see this kind of happening. He knows he's in a country club where he's the only black person there, and people are trying to take trying to line their pockets off of his and his daughter's work. And to me, that was a big payoff from some little breadcrumbs that were left in the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure I'm assuming you're talking about like when he sits down with the coach and those two guys, right?
Yeah.
I think one of them, Dylan McDermott.
Yes.
It's funny with certain actors you see, like, you just know their name. You don't know the character they play. It's just kind of, they have a very kind of distinct
He's
look
never aged, by the way. He looks the same age as he always looks.
I know.
So does the other guy that I always get him confused with, though. There's Dylan McDermott and Dermot Mulroney.
Dermot Mulroney. Yeah.
I never know which is which.
We never see them at the same time.
That's true.
They're the same person. And we're talking about, like I say, awkward moments. Maybe most people would not. I mean, he has no inner monologue, as I would say, right? Like he's just gonna say what he feels and to speak his mind. And I think another character later on says it about him, and it's like, well, you can't help but at least respect it. Even if you don't agree with it, but he's being 100% with you. Moments like that, as an audience member, you see him act that way, and you're like, oh, what are you doing? What are you doing? Just go along with it. But he's got a plan, as you say. And
74 pages.
Yeah,
78
pages.
78
pages, right? Yeah.
Sorry.
You're right.
But to be fair, those are the foreword and the preface.
Exactly.
And the thank yous.
But to kind of go back to what I was saying and why I think there's payoffs is like they show the Rodney King situation, and that wasn't just put there for the sake of saying, look at the time period. It was there to show that you could see that Richard was becoming even more aware of what's going on in the world. And you see, I think, the Williams sister standing next to Nancy Reagan, and I think you could kind of see him like not only are there these injustices that are becoming a bigger issue, but you can see how certain people are trying to like, hey, let's have you stand next to me for my next big campaign thing, you know, and use them in a certain way. And I thought that was very subtly and well done how they put that in there and justified why he's freaking out on these guys when a lot of us, like we all say, like, why not take the money?
Well, yeah, it's a certain juxtaposition you see, because you see Rodney King, he's like just a random, you know, he's a random brother, and you know, he's pretty expendable there, right? Like he gets beaten by those cops. There's cameras. I don't think they knew there were cameras, right? But in hindsight, we saw what happened with that trial, and then, as you said, it's funny, as expertly as you say, he sees his daughters being accepted into this kind of lifestyle or different this and that, but basically because of a skill they have. And this is the juxtaposition that minorities may have, that some people may be like, oh, well, why sweat that? But it's a very deep thing, you know, how you may get treated differently because you can make money for people. You know what I mean? So this is very like deep. So, and they don't go too deep in it. They could, in a different filmmaker's hand, they could, you know, really zero in on that kind of stuff. But this, you know, it's very social commentary, but not too in your face. It's a little subtle, actually, which I think is good.
Yeah, I feel like they probably would have dived in more if there wasn't just so much content with the story on its own. Because again, this movie came in at 2 hours 24 minutes, so I think they had a time issue there. But Andy, I want to talk about another conflict, one that we've seen building for a little bit here. Richard fires the coach, says no more juniors, but his wife's not happy about it, and she's like, "Hey, are we a team?" And he's trying to, "We're a family."
Well, he's got the plan. I mean, he's got this 78-page plan, and no one's told him otherwise not to do it. So I think he's very focused. It's actually, to me, it's crazy, like how you could commit to something and just keep going and just not, you know, let anything slow you down. I was wondering, like, does he ever sleep? Because he literally goes like from coaching to security job to more coaching to going to try to go to country clubs and whatnot. But yeah, no, that was an interesting part. But like James had mentioned, you know, when you have an actress of her caliber kind of like being able to kind of come at King Richard, she's kind of the only one that's able to kind of negotiate with him, where everybody else, he just kind of bulldozes his way through it.
And by the way, real quick shout out, this is the second movie we did with Sherwood Country Club representing, of course, Bridesmaids. They were there.
I didn't even catch it this time.
Yeah, that's where that meeting happened, was at Sherwood Country Club. Same spot that they had lunch in Bridesmaids.
Wow.
And also Palos Verdes Golf Club was in there as well. So
dang,
there's like 4 people that are going to get these name drops.
I've been to that one.
Yeah. So, but I felt a little, this next part, I felt like they sold out old Paul, the original coach here, because Richard calls Rick, how'd you pronounce his last name? Macy? Rick Macy.
Who's so great in this, John Bernthal.
Richard calls the Punisher, as I call him.
Yeah.
The coach that Paul had pointed out earlier. So Rick almost gets jumped when they go to meet the girls, but Richard stands up for him. And Rick really wants to sign them, so he actually signs their contract, and now the family is in a motorhome off to Florida. They see the amazing compound and get to the training, and it's all good until Richard tells Rick they aren't doing juniors and they're going to hit on an open stance. Andy, we talk about him not moving and not budging. Now Rick is the one with some chagrin, and he's like, "Bro, you could have told me this in Compton."
I know, yeah. That's so funny. Like you said, made him sign his contract, got everything he needed, then packs the family up, goes to Florida, and then says, "Oh, by the way," like, man, the guy is very confident in his daughters.
I have to give Rick some credit here, by the way, as well, because I think this is one of those stories you can imagine playing out later where they're like, what? The Venus has to give 15% of her earnings to this guy forever. But like, you see how much he spends and invests into her to get there? Like, how much money does he lose on people who don't make it is what I have to think. Like, that's incredible. But But James, we get this next phase of things, and Rick still doesn't want his daughters to play.
Yeah, Richard. Yeah, it's fascinating, and yeah, a shout out to Jon Bernthal, who I think my first time seeing him was as Shane.
Yeah,
he's always Shane to me from Walking Dead.
Me too. Yeah,
I actually met him before the second season. I met him at a function. I told him, "Hey, I'm a big fan of your work," and I mean, spoiler alert, he doesn't make it after that. But it's funny, the look he gave me. I mean, we chat for a bit, but the look he was giving me was, you just don't know what is coming down the pike. He's probably thinking, where's his next job coming from? But it's turned out very well for him.
Oh, yeah.
He's a tough guy. He has a tough. I mean, in person, he looks pretty tough too. I'll say that. He plays those roles, kind of very similar roles all the time, and it was a pleasant surprise to see him play this kind of role.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
He was so great in this film. I mean, everyone was great in the roles, but to see him be a guy that really didn't have much control, even though he does, but not with Richard. Because the way Richard serves up, the way he looks at stuff, he's always smiling in your face when he's telling you no. It's like, well, you got these daughters who I'm training, who we know are, spectacularly talented. And, I guess he takes a liking to them. It's tough because at this point in the movie, we know it's tricky because we know how this turns out. But unless you've done a deep dive on the story, you don't know all the details. And it's surprising to me how he held her out, and he's going a completely different route. Everyone else has gone to the juniors, right? The juniors route. And he's like, no, we're not doing that. And in my back of my head, I'm like, who would do that? Who would make that kind of decision? Who would have the confidence to make that kind of decision? It's almost like if you got a great basketball phenom as a child and everyone's saying, oh, you got to go to AAU circuit. And he's like, no, I'm not doing that. They're just going to play for their school. That's it. So,
I mean, not even play for the school. She wasn't competing at all.
Yeah,
so
you're right.
It's like saying, no, they're not going to play until they get signed by the NBA.
Yeah, perfect. Actually, even better, right? Like going further than like what LeVar Ball did with his kids, LaMelo, I think, right? He took him out of the high school stuff and was just playing pro. But yeah, no playing whatsoever. Really just practicing and scrimmaging until it's time to go pro.
Which is so crazy to me because I feel like you just learn the sport better and competition. You have to be in an actual game setting. So to me, that was really nuts.
I wanted to hit too on something James said about how this guy's always he may not be the best negotiator or something. Well, King Richard's always negotiating, and we always talk about belief and confidence in this movie, and we think about whether it be Venus's confidence, and everyone talks about her confidence. But the fact that Richard had such confidence in his kids, he knew, because all the time I'm thinking Rick's going to just fire you guys and say, forget it and cut his losses and move on. Like, why am I paying for your house, paying for your food, paying for your training, and you're not even going to let her compete? Forget this, get out of here. But I think Richard knew, no, my girls are so good. You're not going to cut them because you know better. And there was just that confidence throughout. Even when he was negotiating with Rick to sign the contract, he's like, hey, Nick's really good. Maybe we should go to him.
I like that part. Yeah.
I'll sign your contract. So they're training and some time passes, and Venus is doing an interview and Richard isn't happy with the questions. But while the questions are coming, Serena is training. Venus hears Kornikova is going pro, and she asks Rick to convince Richard to let her go pro also. But Richard sees a news story about Capriati and decides to go to Disney World instead. Now, Rick is angry and accuses Richard of making it all about himself. And when his wife is mad, he says, I put this whole thing together, but now everyone wants to act like they know better than me. Now we get the big blowout fight between the two as all the tension comes to a head and Richard leaves with some things to think about. He tells Venus a heartbreaking story about his dad leaving him to be beaten down by white men, and that he always wanted to protect his daughters, and that Venus is going to be an inspiration someday. We talked about a demo reel for Will Smith here. Not to jump to the very end, but that that scene with him and Venus was just incredible. But I want to, I kind of want to go back to the fight with Rick and Richard and James. We'll talk to you about that one. And now even Rick's had enough of it. He's like, bro, like, what are we doing here? But our guy, King Richard, stands firm.
Yeah, and I love how at one point, I think Rick says, nice house, by the way, or something.
Yeah.
Like, I wonder who paid for it. And when Will Smith or Richard smashingly says, like, hey, don't go there, Rick. You're better than that. And the beauty of it is we had not seen the house up until that point, because I think it hits us more that he's this cavalier with, when we're doing things this way. And when you see the inside of that house compared to where they came from in Compton, you're like, yo, this is a bold MFer to be behaving the way he is. He knows he has gold. Like, he's, gold has come from his loins. Forgive me, forgive the vernacular, but like, he knows that his children are going to shake up the world, as he says. I mean, it's that literal. And then we have the great scene with Aunjanue Ellis. Like I said, that's a very Oscar-worthy scene. This is an Oscar film. Yeah. And she's just great. She's talking about, I've been there with you every step of the way. And I think anyone that does anything extraordinary or does stuff that's not the typical 9 to 5s, right? Stuff that they work in subjective fields, or as you say, there's a meritocracy to sports, but there's no guarantee. There's a lot of really great people that we never find out about, right? Michael Jordan isn't the greatest to ever play. He's just the greatest we know that's played. And you know what I mean? Like, there's stories for guys that didn't make it there for whatever reasons. But it's that great thing of seeing like the companion, us as we have our pursuits. There's always there's a strong woman behind the man, or a strong partner behind the man or the woman. Women too, or whatever. And then, when you see Will Smith tell Venus, he's basically letting her know why he's the way he is. And we're seeing his character change. That's kind of like the arc of his character. He's very been stubborn, but now, also as a parent, comes a time where you got to let go. And that's really what this is about. Even, we'll talk about it later, but the point where she's supposed to hold her own bag. I don't know if you guys caught that later on in the film, but all these make something. Will Smith, you talk about someone that has full command of their acting instrument. You think about all the roles he's done, and I point to this Pursuit of Happiness and a Fresh Prince of Bel-Air episode when his father comes back. And there's not many actors that are so powerful that they can move you to tears whenever they do it. And he's one of them. I'm blown away by how he can emote and be so vulnerable in these roles. You know what I mean? And you could see it coming, but he's so good at it, and it's never crocodile tears. He's just an amazing actor. And, it's just a real joy to see him do this kind of role. As opposed to like typical action. So he could just be an action star if he wanted,
it's insane the amount of the seasons of his career, whether you go back to the music career, obviously, and then he was the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and then he was the action heartthrob, kind of guy, and now he's just this incredible actor. And I want to go back into the point where he was arguing with his wife, and again, so many things in this movie played off, like those scenes where she was training Serena, because they added that in and they left that part in. I think a lot of people could say you could have cut that out, but because they left that in, when she says this, I've been there, you're like, yeah, she has. She was the one training Serena. She was a part of this. She wasn't just the yes and person we talked about, which makes this whole thing feel so much heavier and more impactful. But Andy, I want to talk to you about the end there, where he tells the story about how his dad ran away while he was getting beat down. And you realize all of this and everything we've seen so far is his way of not running away and trying to shield his kids from getting the, proverbial beat down from the world here. And that I thought that was incredibly touching.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And as James had kind of said, this acting performance, I don't know what else you can possibly do to not get, an Oscar after this. I don't know how he didn't get one for Pursuit of Happiness, but Leo, it took Leo a while to finally get one too. So I think Will should get one this time around. But did he already get to the part where he talks to Serena as well? Because
no.
Okay.
Well, let's just kind of get to there real quick. So before Venus's pro debut, she's offered a huge contract for $3 million, but it's for one night only. But Venus wants to show them how good she is before she signs. Things start off rough, but eventually Venus gets in the groove again and she wins. So the offer is up to $4 million, but Richard holds. Meanwhile, Serena is having a tough go of it, but Richard says she is going to be the greatest of all time. Mm-hmm. Andy, you prefaced it. Take it away.
No, I just thought that was so good. Yeah, because and I have an older sister who was amazing at sports, so I could kind of identify with Serena. Well, I didn't turn out to be Serena.
What Andy is saying is he's just like Serena.
I'm pretty much Serena Williams.
Her doppelganger, everything.
Yeah, I couldn't tell the difference.
Very similar. No, but just having like an older sibling that's really great at sports, and you're also good, but you're not quite in the spotlight quite yet. And I just really appreciated that scene for him, what he said to her. I thought it was like super touching. And I think for her was super motivating too, because she probably was, it's interesting how this movie, we didn't really spend that much time with Serena Williams. It was a lot more of Venus Williams. So I thought having that scene in there was really great, because you get to see like, no, we believe in you. We believe in you so much that you're going to destroy everyone. Like, she's going to be number one, maybe the best women's tennis player for Venus, but for Serena, she's going to be the greatest. I just thought that was such a cool scene.
And
it was.
And James, I want to ask you this hypothetical. Speaking of that, because going into this, you think this is going to be a movie about the Williams sisters, but it really is just about Venus for the most part. And I want to ask you, this is just a hypothetical. What do you think is emotionally harder, at being a child, dealing with your siblings' success being so much greater than yours, but eventually becoming the better of the two, or being the one growing up as the better of the two, but then watching as your sibling surpasses you as you get older?
It's funny you mentioned that, because they really try and, I think, address, they're not hardcore with it, but they try and address this dynamic throughout the film, right? Mm-hmm. And, mostly, there's this thing they call sibling rivalries, right? Mm-hmm. So they have a very healthy sibling rivalry. It shows them being very supportive of each other throughout the film. And it's funny, you get into the psychology of it, and, it's very important that Richard's like, yay, Venus is the first, she'll be number one, but you're going to be, because, if he said this to her for real or not, we don't know. Maybe he did, because, your kids, right? You should know your kids more than anybody else. And Serena it's like she has that, what they call like that fire burning within her. You see how she plays the game. She's fired up when she plays, right? Mm-hmm. She is relentless. Right, it's with power and like fervor, and I love when you watch Serena play. Even they showed her as a young girl, she hits, she hits the thing. She's like, come on, that's like her signature thing. And Venus, as great of a player she is, I never really got that kind of killer mentality from me. And I remember seeing it clearly when they first played against each other in the U.S. Open or Wimbledon, and Venus seemed kind of upset that she beat her little sister. And I'll just leave it at that. That's all kind of psychological stuff you can go there with. It's just very fascinating. I think naturally you would be upset to like see your sister or your younger sibling upset for losing to you on such a grand stage. But it's almost like Venus almost treating her in a nurturing older sister way. Like, even though you've passed me up or you passed me up, I'm going to still support you, know? But it can't be easy because we're all ego driven, right? You want to be the best, but in the end of the day, sometimes you want to be the best, but someone's just that much more better than you or in the world, and you just throw your hands up. There's no arguing there. She's the Michael Jordan of tennis,
right?
Serena.
And Andy, I kind of want to use that to kind of pivot to as a filmmaker, a screenwriter, a director. I got to ask you about this. I think this movie would have been very easy to go into sibling rivalry, as James had mentioned. Would have been very easy to talk about their clash, which one's the best. Mm-hmm. And as a writer and director, I feel like it's got to be very tempting to not think you have this superstar character who is literally part of this story, but that's not what they're trying to do. They're trying to make it a movie of hope. What's it got to be like? You put your mind in the head of the screenwriter for this and having to have the patience and the restraint to not make it about the biggest star in the world or the biggest star in tennis?
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised myself because I wanted to know more about Serena, but to me, the story that was told to us, I thought was even more interesting because we have seen, Serena Williams has been relevant for the last 15, 20 years of our lives. Mm-hmm. Whether it's commercials or, just winning ESPYs and whatnot, she's been on top of the game forever. So I think it's kind of like, we know what she's like now. And I don't think we needed to see exactly how the sisters acted then. I think it was more interesting to kind of see where they both came from, where their family came from, the things they had to do. Like, I had no idea that they were living in Florida. And, I thought it was interesting. And, they didn't talk about their sister that was murdered. Mm-hmm. I wondered if that was going to get brought up. I thought maybe it'd be mentioned or something later.
I forgot about that.
Oh, yeah.
You're right.
I mean, they mentioned her in a movie, but they didn't mention that. So it seemed like a movie that just, they did a movie recently with Marilyn Monroe that I felt like was really good with that. They just talked about a piece of her life, which I thought was interesting. Instead of being like, this is the Marilyn Monroe biopic, it was kind of like, I think it's called A Week with Marilyn. This is the week in the life of Marilyn Monroe. And I thought this was an interesting way to be like, this is because it only covered like 5 or 6 years, right?
5 or 6 years, yeah.
Yeah,
and that makes a much more interesting narrative. Like once you start winning, I mean, there's really we get it. You're great, but to see like what someone is before they get to that moment, that can actually be a little bit more, for the regular, for us regular folk, for people that aren't like touching hands with the gods. That's
speak for yourself.
I think it's a little bit more. You like speak for yourself, but. That makes for much more interesting narrative to see. There's a book I really like, and this will just be 10, 15 seconds, but Steve Martin, he wrote this beautiful book called Born Standing Up. And we know, if you know Steve Martin's career, he's a great comedic actor, comedian, but it's not about when he becomes super famous. It's his journey to that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And it's so much more interesting to see. Because also when someone sees that, you might inspire somebody when you show the journey. Because most people, they always see a finished product, but when they see a journey that's filled with ebbs and flows, it's a roller coaster. You never know who's in the audience seeing that. And now we're talking about a very deep level of the importance of film or art in general, what it does for society. And I know, look, I wouldn't call this movie The Godfather Part 2 or, Schindler's List or something like that. But movies like this have a strong merit, because this is something you could like sit down with the family and watch, and it's not just cookie cutter, boring stuff. It's just really, really a beautiful story about a family. It probably sounds like I'm wrapping up my statement about it, but this is a really great family drama. It's a sport movie, but it's a family movie, family drama.
Right. Mm-hmm. And really about believing in yourself, having a plan, and fighting and betting on yourself. Really,
yes.
Not to wrap it up too much, because you're right. That does sound like a wrap it up comment, but let's get to the end of it. By the way, let's just speaking of, because we're kind of getting there, but it's match time, and Venus is in one corner, Vicario is in the other. With an open stance, Venus takes the fight to the best in the world. Vicario takes a break, though, to ice Venus, and it works. Venus loses, but even in defeat, we see King Richard's true greatness when he says he's proud of Venus and cheers her on and reminds her that she is like a real-life version of Rocky Balboa because she stood toe-to-toe with the champ and left the champ's knees shaking. And as she leaves the tennis court, she sees what may be even better than a trophy, a crowd of people representing a new generation and possibly a new kind of fan to the sport of tennis. Of course, 9 months later, Venus signs a deal for $12 million, and we see all the great things that come the way of the Williams sisters, just like Richard predicted. As I said, this kind of feels like a movie about believing in yourself. And James, I want to talk to you because you mentioned it, and it was a very great moment about, in a lot of ways, a dad letting go and letting the kid letting the bird fly, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, because as he gave that speech about trying to protect her, as he gave that speech of trying to protect her, I mean, it's natural. He's kind of sending her out into this world of fame and notoriety and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, even his hesitation after seeing what happened to Capriati, you know, he's like, oh, I can't let my daughter get involved in those kind of things. Because, I mean, that's what he's been trying to avoid anyway. I mean, he was raising them in the hood. You know, this is Compton. Anyone that lives in LA now, I've never been to Compton. Maybe it's probably not as bad as it was back then. So let's just assume how bad it was back then, right? We're talking about late 80s, early 90s. You know, we've seen it straight out of Compton, right? Mm-hmm. You see them rap about it. I don't think they were embellishing.
No.
It's very different from, when they were in Florida. But yeah, something as simple as I'll hold my own bag, daddy. That ain't just for the sake of it. I mean, there's like a lot of symbolism in that, like I got it from here. Not that he won't be involved anymore, but, as a parent, and, our parents have dealt with it, even though we don't really grasp it, but, as a parent, you have this child that you see from birth and you're just trying to protect them. But at a certain point, you got to let them go out in the world and find their own way. And that's not an easy thing. Some parents it might be easier for more, but he knows what his kids will face. So I think it's very beautiful and subtle, and it's just kind of a beautiful way to end a movie. And as you said, to see those adoring fans, some sports movies, they try and have a happy ending, or you beat the person, but there's something more great for storytelling if you don't see them win. You see how they deal with defeat in the end when you're hoping that they're going to win. How do they deal with that? Because as an athlete or as a human being, how do you get back up off that canvas? That's really what shows your character and, what you're made of and all that kind of stuff. Because it's easy to show, like when people are successful, showing someone has a setback, I think that's just another great inspiring storytelling. And I'm sure that they may be debated about how they were going to do those endings.
Yeah. And it's such a good movie about hope. And as I said, not giving up on yourself. And Andy, I want to talk to you about after the loss. I thought the moment after the match where Venus is crying and, King Richard, he damn near gets me to shed a tear where he's just like, I'm so proud of you. If you can't respect yourself now, you never will. And for this guy, that's all about being the best and all about winning and never doubting yourself. In the moment of failure, he never wavers. And he says, no, you're still great. I thought that was just such a great moment in the film. But what say you about the way this whole thing wrapped up?
First of all, Arancha Sanchez Vicario is one of my favorite names in sports. So I was glad she got a little cameo there.
Esto locura. I was like, yo, this is so funny.
And wasn't she like super young too? Like, it's so crazy to me how gifted these tennis players are at such a young age. Like, was Venus 14 or 15 when she was playing at that end?
14.
And that it's a great thing. Like Jack said, it's like the Rocky Balboa story. You know, you put all this effort and all this time, your whole life into this sport, and then you don't win the big game at the end. But what do you win? You win, you know, a lifetime of knowledge, you know, that's going to come from all this. Like you're like, oh, I lost this time, but now I'll be ready for the next time. Sometimes people have success super young, and then, you know, it's downhill from there, you know, because where can you go from up? So it's nice having this ending where it's like, oh yeah, she didn't win that match, but a note to you people watching, she's going to go out and just like tear up the world, and so is her little sister. So yeah, I thought it was a really solid ending. Yeah. Very feel good movie.
Right, without being too on the nose about it being a feel good movie either. You know, it wasn't. You know, it wasn't like corny or whatever. It was very like, it felt real, maybe because it's based on a real story, but it felt real, and it felt, I guess, rooted in something. And I think that's a testament to the actors, the directing, the writers. Like I said, very few times the movie goes over 2 hours, and like, I don't know if they could have cut much out of it. I feel like everything kind of mattered and needed to be in there. Any final thoughts, guys? I'll let James, why don't you take the first shot at any final thoughts, any wrap up thoughts?
Yeah, I would just say to any Will Smith fan, like, you'll be in for a treat, because, you know, in most movies you see him in, you don't see him escape into a character. And I would say this is the first time I've ever seen that of him. I mean, I know he did Ali, but, you know, it's different. He was a younger actor at the time. And, you know, I would say doing this is with the degree of difficulty to do this, he became another person, and the mannerisms and all that. I think it's one thing. Will Smith's already a confident actor. So playing Ali, he's just playing a confident athlete, you know, so it's not much of a stretch for him to do that, I think, you know. But I just think it's a masterful performance from him. And once again, I really hope maybe this will be the one for him. I think it'll be well deserved. I haven't seen who would be up against him for the Oscars, but sometimes you see a performance and it's like, well, come on, like this is the one. And this definitely rivals Pursuit of Happiness. And I will say, I remember seeing that movie, and I was with a whole bunch of grown ass men, sitting in a theater watching Pursuit of Happiness. These are like big guys, like football player type dudes. And there was a lot of, you know, I think people were trying to hide a lot of sniffles when we were watching that movie. You know, trying to be tough because
you got a cold.
Yeah, exactly. Oh,
you didn't have that cold before the movie.
he does it, man. It's something about him. You know, he's just so good. He's just a great actor. I really, it's a great treat. I recommend this movie for anybody.
Yeah,
to watch.
Yeah, and ditto all that. But yeah, Will Smith for me is like, I feel like I grew up with him, you know, because you watch Fresh Prince of Bel-Air every week. And just like I think James mentioned about how he's like a motivational speaker. It was cool. I got to go to a thing at SAG for Concussion years ago, and he spoke, and I got to be there for it. And I remember while he was like speaking, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, man, this guy is a really good motivational speaker. Will Smith, like you almost like forget that he's this giant star because he's so kind of like relatable and just like, you know, he's very easy to at least listen to. He's got a book out now, which I hope to grab and read because I find him very interesting. But yeah, I mean, what a great performance. And I did want to mention, I don't know, I wrote this down. The two sisters kind of reminded me, I think it's just with sports, because I grew up playing sports. You like definitely like, it's like a different relationship, especially with like family or close friends. And it kind of reminded me of a League of Their Own a little bit, you know, how the two sisters have like their little rivalry, but one's really good and then the other one's pretty good, and then but they're both good. And then
Gina Davis and the other one. You're right.
Yeah, the older sister drops the ball for her.
Yeah. That's right. Was that Madonna was in that movie too, right? Was she?
Yeah.
And
Rosie O'Donnell.
Yeah, Tom Hanks takes the longest pee in all time.
That is funny. That's what I remember too.
That's a great film, actually.
Maybe we'll get to it next time around on this show.
Yeah,
but
it's a good one.
Andy, of course, we got to end it with the world famous Andy Rossi 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Yeah, of course we do. So Will Smith was in this movie. He was in a movie called The Legend of Bagger Vance, and that was with Matt Damon. Matt Damon's in that movie.
Yeah.
Matt Damon is in Ocean's 11, 12, 13 with Brad Pitt, who's in Sleepers with Kevin Bacon.
Nice.
I had to end it with Sleepers, baby.
I like that you made sure to add a few Oceans in there to like just make it not seem like such an easy pick. But wow, well done. Guys, this is the last one of the season. We don't know what our next movie is gonna be. We're gonna powwow. We're gonna figure out what that's gonna be. But for now, just before we sign off, let the world know where they can find you online, James Shippey.
Yeah, you can find me at JShippy2 on Twitter and at JEShippy2 on IG.
And Andy Ross.
Well, I just want to say too to our listeners, thank you for listening. And also, it's coming up to the holiday season. What a great time to catch up on season 1 of our show. So listen to as many as you can, so you're ready for next season.
You can binge watch all of them now on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yes.
You can binge listen.
Yeah.
You're gonna be flying in a plane somewhere, going to see some relatives, listen to some Evolution of Movies on the way.
Yes, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and of course on YouTube as well. I'm Jack Farmer. You can find me at Real Jack Farmer across all social media. But yes, thank you to everyone who's listened to season 1. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Let us know in the comments what movie you would like to see us review next season. We're gonna do a whole bunch of them. More to come. This has been a fun time, guys. Thank you for season 1.
Yeah, we did it.
Happy holidays.